This is about only St. Pete and the beaches. Now, Clever,
Amazing.
take it.
Amazing. Oh no, it's all good. It's all good.
Shut up.
All right, all right, all right. I'll take it. You got it. Thank you.
Otherwise, I'll kill you.
All right, all right.
Otherwise, I'll
Thank
kill
you. Thank you so much. That guy was awesome. All right, all right. Yeah, that guy was great. So everybody's awesome. Everybody. That is one thing about St. Pete that I love is everybody is very friendly here, and you don't get that just everywhere.
I don't want that.
You don't want this, dude?
No.
You might have. Okay, if you're moving to St. Pete in 2026, then this video is for you because we are going to go over all the pros and cons that come with moving here. We're talking about the most walkable neighborhoods. We're going to talk about how to navigate flood zones and everything you need to know to be prepared for navigating not just that, but also just insurance in general and how to do that even if you're someone that is like me and you like historic 1920s bungalows. And stick till the end because we're going to showcase a historic 1920s bungalow that I think is absolutely killer, prime spot. And we're going to also talk about a condo in one of the most walkable parts of St. All right, for our first pro, we're going to talk about St. Pete's walkability. So St. Pete is one of the most walkable cities in the nation, which is awesome because if you live in neighborhoods like this one, this is Kenwood, where you can get historic bungalows. We're gonna look at one later in this video, but you can get one here, and we're on 3rd Avenue, but right here, Seminole Park. But this neighborhood specifically, so you can get a bungalow here on 3rd Avenue. You go south to Central Avenue, and then you can literally walk from Central Avenue all the way down to the downtown area of St. Pete, which is just awesome. And what's awesome about it is you see so many people walking around. Like, it's a Wednesday evening and we've got tons of people out, people walking their dogs, people out for a jog, 5:30 p.m. Super quiet, super peaceful. It's great. To understand St. Pete, basically this is how it looks. You've got Central Avenue, which goes all the way from, I mean, not really St. Pete Beach because you go down Pasadena, but once you go up Pasadena, you get to Central, and then you take Central all the way to downtown, and Central Avenue is covered in commercial businesses. And closer to downtown, Central Avenue is going to have a ton of businesses, but near downtown, you're going to have more restaurants, you're going to have more bars, you're going to have more coffee shops. As you go further west towards the beach, you're going to get less and less of that, but it's still going to be walkable. You could definitely go to Gulfport. You could definitely bike to Gulfport. And that brings us to my next point is the Pinellas Trail. And the Pinellas Trail goes from basically the pier along Central, and then it veers off and goes down, and then you could take an offshoot and go all the way down to Gulfport, go to downtown Gulfport, or you can continue on the Pinellas Trail going up Seminole and off to Dunedin and Tarpon. And it is the most popular bike trail in the Tampa Bay area. So that also is right off of Central Avenue, right near downtown, right in downtown St. Pete, which adds to downtown St. Pete just being a top spot for its walkability and downtown living. The other thing I want to mention is the Sunrunner. So the Sunrunner is our public transportation system, which takes you from downtown St. Pete all the way to St. Pete Beach, and it runs about every 30 minutes or so. You can expect to see one, but this is a great option. So not only can you walk everywhere, you can bike everywhere, but for that one spot that you really would need a car to get to, St. Pete Beach, you have public transportation available. I often start by saying this because if you are moving to St. Pete to be in the downtown area, to be in that lifestyle of biking, taking public transportation and walking everywhere in Trader Joe's and going carless, you work from home. And to me, that sounds super exciting. There are tons of options for you, but the closer you are to the downtown area, the more you're going to be around that lifestyle, which is generally what we see. And there are still other areas that are walkable, like Crescent Lakes is obviously near Sucking Gardens, Old Northeast, Distant Heights even has Distant Heights Plaza, which is super walkable. Gulfport has its own downtown area, which we've talked about in some other videos. I say all that to say that If you are looking to move to St. Pete because of the walkability, you are in the right spot because it is absolutely insane.
My name's Aubrey, and this is my husband, Aaron.
And we make these videos every week for folks looking to relocate to St. Petersburg. So if you're looking to move to St. Petersburg, then definitely reach out to us. Our number is on the screen. We are licensed realtors, and we would love to work with you.
Also, don't forget to download our free relocation guide. It has everything that you need to know before you move to St. Pete. All right, so let's talk about the lifestyle in St. Pete. One of my favorite things that I love about St. Pete is the outdoor lifestyle that we have here. People love to walk around, go to parks, take their dogs out, meet their neighbors. All of that sort of stuff is definitely prioritized here. And I think part of the reason for that is because of how walkable it is, as well as how consistently we have sunny days. St. Pete actually holds the world record for the most consecutive days of sunshine, which is pretty crazy. So besides getting a little bit chilly during the winter time, it stays pretty sunny and warm. So people always love to be outside and exploring and walking around. The next thing that I love about St. Pete's lifestyle is the community. Despite St. Pete being a big city, St. Pete actually has a very welcoming atmosphere. People love to meet one another here, and they're very friendly. Despite St. Pete being the 5th largest city in Florida, it doesn't have that lonely feeling that you typically get in this city. There's a lot of people meeting one another, neighbors going to events together, and one of my favorite things is, even though me and Aaron do not live in Crescent Lake, we met some people who do live in Crescent Lake, and they invited us to their neighborhood event. We would go to a local restaurant, and the local restaurant had $5 martinis, so we would go every Monday, and we called it Martini Monday, and it spanned through all ages, and it was just a lot of fun. So even though we didn't live there, people were still so welcoming to us and invited us to that event. Now let's talk about the difference between St. Pete and Tampa. St. Pete definitely has more of that coastal, beachy feel, and it's also very condensed. The city is all close together, whereas if you look at Tampa, it's got more of that corporate urban feel. It also is very spread out. There's a lot more suburbs and neighborhoods that aren't very close to the downtown area. One important note is, because St. Pete is so condensed, people love to be around the downtown area. So you'll actually see that the rent is higher in St. Pete's downtown area compared to Tampa. Tampa actually has a lower rent than St. Pete, but you reverse the roles a bit, because when it comes to buying, St. Pete actually has lower home prices on average compared to Tampa, that has a little bit more expensive home buying prices. So it's kind of funny, because people love the downtown so much in St. Pete, the rent is higher there compared to Tampa, but then reverse the roles, buying is actually cheaper in St. Pete. All right, so let's talk about who St. Pete might be for, or who it might not be for. So a lot of our families that we've helped relocate to St. Pete have checked off St. Pete from their list because they had larger families, and St. Pete does tend to have a lot of historic homes. And historic homes, while they're very beautiful and very charming, they do come with a little bit of quirky layouts, and they tend to only have one bathroom, and if they do have a lot of bedrooms, they tend to be kind of smaller. But that doesn't mean that they're not doable for larger families. You definitely can find homes that will function for larger families, and also if your family tends to like being outdoors more than the functionality of the indoor space, then you will like St. Pete, because it does have a lot of parks and a lot of activities for your family to do outside. If you like more of that functionality of the indoor space of your home, then the suburbs, around Tampa or even Parish area will have more of those modern layouts that really have more functionality. So now I'm going to pass it back to Aaron, who's going to go over the flood zones, which is something that even as a Florida native, I did not even know. Growing up in Clearwater, I thought that the coastal flooding only happens near the beaches, but Aaron's going to go over how the rivers actually do rise when it comes to coastal flooding. So even if you're not by the beach, you can still experience coastal flooding. So let's pass it back over so that he can go over how our house almost flooded with this past hurricane.
All right. So our next con is going to be flood zones. And this is by far the top asked question by folks relocating and even folks moving around in Florida as we've seen these two massive hurricanes come, is what the heck is the deal with flood zones? How do we avoid them? How do we go about educating ourselves on them? And I think that the best way, and I wish someone did this with me, I wish someone showed me the Pinellas County of just flood zone tool that they have available on their website, where you can literally go and you can look at so much more than just is it in a flood zone or not. Like, you can actually get the data as to why it's in a flood zone, what type of flooding can you expect. So when me and my wife were looking to buy a house, I knew that along the coast we would see coastal flooding. So to avoid coastal flooding, which is, that 4 to 5 foot storm surge flooding that you see on the news, I'm going, okay, we need to be further inland. But what I didn't really think about, and I've got the coastal flood map, kind of the main coastal flooding that you'll see pulled up, is I did not account, and nobody really explained to me, that a lot of these rivers will flood during the hurricane. And so when the hurricane happened, so we found a house, we liked it, we loved it, it was on the lake, and we bought it because for me, that was important. I wanted to be able to fish, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually have a home in our budget on the lake. I love fishing, so the fact that I could, go in the backyard, fish, kayak, paddleboard, the whole 9 yards. So I was really, really excited. And it looked like the home was a lot higher than the other homes. And what that told me was that I likely could get an elevation certificate. And when I asked the sellers, they did have an elevation certificate, and we could use that elevation certificate it basically made it so that the insurance was significantly lower than what it would have been like if our home wasn't higher up. Because our home sat so many feet over the floodplain, while even though our neighbors' homes, which were lower, even though they had to pay quite a bit in insurance, we didn't, because ours was higher. And so because the cost issue wasn't a huge factor there, $800 a year for me was totally worth it to be able to fish in my backyard. And I'll have to pull up a picture of one. This is the biggest fish we've caught in our lake. And this is the second fish we've ever caught. And my wife caught it her first day trying to fish. Going back to the story, we bought the house. We were super, super happy. But then Hurricane Milton rolled around and we fared totally fine. The next morning I got up. I was like, sweet, we did great. No worries at all. But what nobody told me is that with these hurricanes, I guess they go north, and then all the water they pulled out of the bay, it all comes back in, and all the wind from up north gets moved around. And so, again, because Tampa had never really been hit by such a massive hurricane recently, like literally even talking to my neighbors who've been here 30 years, they're like, this has never happened. And I was devastated because when the floodwaters receded, all our fish in the lake had died because of the salt. And it sucked. It sucked so much because I wish I was better prepared for that. And when I did my research and kind of looked into some of these tools that are available, I found out that this was totally avoidable had I known to, look at things like these flood zone maps. Anyhow, this is the main thing that you're going to want to look at when it comes to determining where the lowest flood risk spots are in St. Pete. And that just off the bat, especially when it comes to coastal flooding, is just the elevation itself. You can see a good chunk of Old Northeast is in that lower area, which, it's not necessarily all in the 100-year flood zone yet, but even they're like what they're guessing it's going to be in 2070, like it's creeping up. And so that's why we're seeing a ton of locals from Old Northeast, which historically more popular than the Crescent Lakeside, but we're seeing more people as insurance costs go up, come over to this side. This tool is available. Feel free to text us if you need help using it or finding it or have any questions about it, but I will put the link in the description as well. General rule of thumb with flood zones are if it starts with a X, then you are good. Your lender does not require you to carry flood insurance. That doesn't mean it is not necessarily in a flood zone. Technically, all of Florida is in a flood zone. X500 means it's in like a once every 500 years or so, it's supposed to flood. Any zone that starts with an A or a V, those are going to be your zones that are going to require insurance. And that is what these spots of St. Pete look like. So a lot of the Shore Acres side is going to be there. Now, there are a ton of other factors that play into this, like elevation certificates and the way the home was built and things like the FEMA 50% rule. But again, there are a ton of details there that we don't necessarily have time to go over in this video, but that is in our St. Pete relocation guide. We packed that full of as much information as we can because, again, I wish I had this when I was looking to move to St. Pete because that would have been absolutely amazing. Okay, I want to talk a bit about homeowners insurance. Okay, I want to talk about insurance and I want to talk about it kind of in the context of like an actual listing. And I was at one that I felt like not only gave a good idea of a good example of honestly, I think a really good option in a walkable area in St. Pete, but also a good example of what kind of your classic Kenwood, Crescent Lake, Old Northeast listing is going to look like. And it's going to look like a lot of these 1920s wood framed homes. And there is a lot to keep in mind with a 1920s wood frame home. And that is that wood frame is going to run you a higher insurance premium than a block construction home and a older home. The older the home, typically the higher the insurance is going to be as well. And so those are actually major factors as well that can play into you having homeowners insurance that is just as high as some of my buddies who are getting flooded on the coast that are in newer homes. And so just kind of knowing these things and knowing these nuances is really, really important. That being said, I know of tons of 1920s homes that have really low insurance because they've been well updated, well maintained, and the electric is updated. This one's a good example. So this one, actually, they updated the electric, which it probably was Zinsco or Sylvania before that, which you can't even get insurance on those. And so a lot of what they had done, like water heater is newer, the roof's newer, like a lot of these things are going to contribute to this home's insurance being significantly better than some of the other horror stories that you will hear about. But my main point is it is very, very nuanced. Really, there is no black or white way to look at it. It is very much case specific, but there are some tools and there are some things and some kind of general rules we can follow to help us make kind of the best informed decision until we can narrow in on some properties that we like, and then we can identify exactly what the insurance is going to be kind of by just doing some investigation. But this is a beautiful home, beautiful option. I walked through it. One thing that I loved about it, just while I have your guys' attention, is the wood floors. So again, these are going to be on a crawl space. We'll probably do a whole video on, let me know if you guys want that, like a video on wood frame versus block construction, because I would nerd out there and I'd love to talk about all the pros and cons about block and wood frame and the differences between windows. But I just don't know if people want that. So I don't know if I should talk about that. All right, condo option. I do want to highlight a condo option because I was in a condo that was absolutely beautiful. This condo, I think, is a great option right now, right along the Pinellas Trail and right along Central Avenue. When it comes to condos, insurance your insurance cost is going to be baked into your condo fee. And what you really want to be careful of, and we'll go over this definitely in a more in-depth video, and let me know if you guys want a more in-depth video on this, but you want to just make sure that the financing of the condo is run well. This one is, you can get financing on this condo. This condo, I think, is a great option. It's actually priced really decently, and it's a 2-bedroom downtown in the most walkable part of, like, it's right in the Edge District, which I think is awesome.
All right, so we learned today that there are a lot of good options when it comes to moving to St. Pete, but it is very nuanced.
And like what we mean by that is it's exactly what we talked about, like the flood zones. Like, it's not clear if you're in flood zone X, are you going to be rezoned to flood zone AE? New construction versus older homes, like the insurance risks of being in a wood frame versus a block construction. Can I get an ADU put in? What does that look like? There's just a lot more that we wish we could have gone over in this video as well on, like, neighborhood overviews. For instance, like, prices in St. Pete are just so confusing because they'll jump from one street to another, and it's just really, really tricky knowing how to navigate that when you're looking to relocate to the area. And so we put together a St. Pete relocation guide that's got everything you could possibly want. I mean, basically, when we put it together, we were like, okay, what is everything that we would give our clients and that we would give ourselves if we were moving to St. Pete again? And that's how we came up with it, and something we're stoked about. But yeah, again, text guide to the number on the screen, and we are so excited to get that to you. And if you are looking to move to St. Pete again, we would love to assist you, whether it's now or 5 years down the road, or you just got questions about what it'd be like. We love St. Pete and love talking about it, and love talking about Tampa Bay area in general. So that, we'll see you on the next video.